Penn State versus Ole Miss. The Peach Bowl is finally here, and everyone but Chop Robinson is expected to play in this game in some capacity, which bodes really well for the Nittany Lions.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
He is Zach Seyko from Locked On Nittany Lions. I am Stephen Willis from Locked On Ole Miss, and we are in Thunderdome. And we're going to talk about the Peach Bowl that's set to happen at 12 o'clock Eastern time on Saturday. Zach, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great. We finally got it's game week. We're so close to kickoff. Penn State and Ole Miss. I think the perfect matchup for either side, for both sides.
Yeah, when you look at it, these two teams have the same resume. If you just look at what happened, it was the exact same thing, but they're also polar opposites. It's going to be best versus best as well. I mean, it's truly is an intriguing matchup, and to the point where outside of the playoffs, it's probably the best bowl game that ESPN's going to have this year.
I would say that because you have all the different opt-outs, players in the transfer portal, right? Significant contributors, because I think of the games like Georgia and Florida State. Well, that's not good when you have as many of the talented players opting out. Same thing goes for Ohio State and Missouri. So this one certainly has flair. It has juice, and just about 99% of the impact players are available for both teams, for Penn State and Ole Miss.
Yeah, and in a situation at Orange Bowl, I actually feel bad. They're going to have to play like 6-man football, I think, if this keeps going the way it's going.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
yeah, it's getting out of hand. I guess if you do what you did to Florida State, what Florida State is doing right now, nobody can say anything about it.
Nope.
Yeah. So this football game, like we said earlier, is going to be a major game for ESPN. Penn State for Ole Miss, it's going to be a great matchup. Two teams with the exact same resume, two teams with polar opposites in what they do really well. What are some of the storylines in Penn State right now that Ole Miss fans might need to be aware of?
That truly Penn State's roster is 99% intact. There weren't because James Franklin isn't exactly open about who's injured, who's available, who's not, and you really have to poke and pry and everything. And Abdul Carter and Trey Willis, two significant contributors. A lot of people are familiar with Abdul Carter. He sustained what was a suspected injury. We never really got any clarity on it. In the Michigan State game, left, did not return. And then Trey Willis has been out since and that one was a little more clear. We didn't have to ask or figure out. You put two and two together. Hey, he sustained an upper body injury. We don't know what it was specifically, but both those guys were practicing. In Trey Willis's case, we haven't seen him at any of the open practices for the media in Happy Valley. And then the first one that's open to the public, open to the media down in Atlanta, he's fully dressed. He's in full pads. Same with Abdul Carter. Where they take now, is there? I wasn't there, but footage and pictures and everything, actual action shots. No, but this was a good sign that they were with their respective position groups, fully dressed for practice, because that's trending in the right direction. Outside of Chop Robinson, Penn State has everybody. Kalen King, it might play on a limited basis based on what James Franklin has said, but he is playing. All starting defensive backs, or cornerbacks in this case for Penn State, seem to be available, even if they're on a pitch count. Penn State really has the best case scenario, because I was concerned that you'd be without all three of your starting cornerbacks against this Ole Miss trio of wide receivers. Any of them can act like a number one on any given day, and Penn State is fully intact, which is, again, better for us as the spectators.
So the left tackle that had the weird graphic that he put out, that he didn't exactly say that he was playing in the game. He just said he was going to go down and hang out with his teammates. He's actually practicing, and it looks like he's good to go.
He is practicing. Again, I think a similar situation of he's going to be ready for kickoff. He'll probably be fully dressed. However, how many snaps will he play is to be determined. And it could be a dozen, it could be 2 dozen. It could be almost up to the normal workload. But as far as what Penn State might run 60, 70 plays in this game, same thing with Ole Miss. If he's going to play all of those, I don't think that's the case. Same thing with Kalen King or Curtis Jacobs, any of those guys. Now, some of them I think will play more, like a Theo Johnson. I think he'll play more snaps than any of those players, but will still be limited as far as how much he's going to be, how much exposure he's going to have on the offense on the football field.
Hey, tell me about the player that is going to be replacing Chop Robinson that Ole Miss fans might not know about.
I don't know about replacing. I don't know that that's the right word, because Penn State's essentially had three co-starters. Yeah. They've had three co-starters at that defensive end spot. Adisa Isaac is playing probably on a pitch count as well, since he's declaring for the draft, but he is going to be playing in this game. Same situation. But Denai Dennis Sutton is everybody is who you're talking about, who you're alluding to. What can I say about him? Nasty, high motor, play, within reason, will play past the whistle. All the intangibles that you want, extremely intelligent. And the only difference between him and Chop Robinson is that he's younger. he's just behind him in terms of eligibility. Denai Dennis Sutton is that good, was a top player. It was down to Penn State and Georgia on signing day, and Penn State was able to prevail and get him to be a Nittany Lion. But he's going to be a first-round pick in his own right, as long as everything continues to trend in the right direction. So there's not that much of a drop-off between Chop Robinson and Denai Dennis Sutton. So sorry, Ole Miss fans. You're still getting that game wrecker on the defensive end spot. If you're looking for other rotational guys, since Adisa Isaac will probably have a pitch count, Zariah Fisher, Amin Vanover. Amin Vanover is more of your run defender, edge setter. Zariah Fisher can pin the ears back and get after the quarterback, but not the same caliber as Chop Robinson, Isaac, or Denai Dennis Sutton.
Yeah, and Ole Miss with Cedric Johnson opting out of the bowl game, the players that are going to come in, you have Isaac Ukwu, who is a transfer that came from James Madison. So he came in for 1 year. And then Centarian Perkins, the five-star player that was between Ole Miss and Alabama, top linebacker in the country. He does a little bit of that Harold Perkins role of rushing off the edge, and he's going to be fully healthy for the first time in a while, honestly, probably since before the Auburn game. So he'll be healthy in this game. When we come back, we are going to talk about what we're expecting in the game and who are each team's picks to click that everybody needs to pay attention for. Right now, I do want to let you know that thank you for watching the podcast today and making it the first listen of the day. We're just getting started. Who are the players that are the pick to click? We will tell you next. You shouldn't have to worry about when you're buying tickets to your next big event. You want them to be easy to find and buy tickets to every type of event in your area that has views from all your seats. Well, GameTime can actually do that. And with Ole Miss playing in the Peach Bowl, with Penn State playing in the Peach Bowl, if you're looking for tickets this weekend, this company specializes in last-minute tickets. So you can go on there now. You can check in the all-in prices, 2 clicks, 2 taps, and you're done. You bought them. They send them to your text message, not your email. GameTime has tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It is the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And with zone deals, this is really cool. You just pick the section and GameTime takes care of the seats for an average of 18% savings. So download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Zach, so we're moving in. We talked a little bit about storylines going into the game. Let's talk about players that we expect to really take off in this game. And I think for Penn State fans, if you really want to know if Ole Miss is on and if everything's going good and you're in a dogfight, it's if Tre Harris is going off. if you see Tre Harris start to get his, I would genuinely begin to get worried about the total outcome. I know a lot of people are going to talk about Quinshon Judkins and Jaxson Dart and all of that stuff, but when Quinshon gets going and everything in the offense is working at full capacity, like it did against A&M, like it did against LSU, Tre Harris was the guy on the outside that was a holy terror. I think he is the player that Penn State fans need to watch out for. It's like, okay, this is kind of going poorly.
And that's why it's so important to have Kalen King, Johnny Dixon available. What the extent of that is yet to be seen. It's to be determined. But when you have all the options that Jaxson Dart does have, he has a run game to offset any of the pressure, right? The defense has got to respect that. They can't just go full throttle and attack and sell out for the pass, right? Keep players back, keep two safeties. Quinshon Judkins takes the attention of that back end of the defense. Now, you also have him in the passing game, right? Penn State is susceptible to the screen. So you have to be aware that Jaxson Dart's probably going to dump it off to when you have all the blitz happy. This is still Manny Diaz's defense, even though he's not calling plays. You're still going to get a blitz happy defense. And then when you have not one, not two, but three options you can go to, like I said, can act as a one on any given day. You don't just casually each get 700 yards. And I'm glad I said on my show that Tre Harris was the best of the bunch. It'll be key to see who's going to line up against him when Kalen King and or Johnny Dixon aren't on the field, because those are your top two corners. I don't think Daquan Hardy will leave the slot. If Tre Harris is going to move around the line of scrimmage, Cam Miller is probably going to be matched up on him. Maybe a Jalen Reed or a KJ Winston going to the safety spot, because if the true freshmen get in the game, I don't know how likely Penn State is to put an Elliott Washington, for example, or King Mack, even though King Mack typically operates out of the slot. Any one of those guys with limited experience so far, their first year in college football, on a veteran like Tre Harris.
Yeah, it's a really big deal. Now, the flip side of the ball that I think that Ole Miss needs to deal with the run game. Penn State is, in my opinion, not necessarily an old style football, but I think that they would be comfortable in 2005 playing football, especially offensive football. I think if Penn State, the first time they get the ball, they want it to be 7.5 minutes long and it want it to end in a touchdown. I think that is the ideal situation for Ole Miss to prevent this game from getting its worst case scenario for Ole Miss. They're going to have to bow up and force some Penn State plays to be off schedule. You need some 3rd and 7s. You need some 3rd and 8s, because if it's 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, 1st and 10 over and over again, Penn State will do that to death and chew you up.
So you're absolutely right on that, Stephen. Penn State is probably one of the most uncomfortable teams in 3rd down. Neither of these teams turn the football over, but Penn State is one of the best teams in the country on defense, forcing turnovers. Ole Miss is actually not one of the, let me just say this, they're not one of the best at forcing turnovers on defense. But both teams protect the football very well, and that's no surprise when you have very good quarterbacks. You have veterans at all spots of the running back, wide receiver, offensive line. You just have a very disciplined offense on both sides of the football. However, Penn State doesn't like it when you, like you said, just kind of throwing a wrench into the plans. If Penn State isn't able to get 7-8 yards on first down consistently, and they get into 3rd and mediums, which is really, it's really a shame because of all the talent that they have, that a 3rd and 5 really sets Penn State's offense into a whirlwind, because you have Drew Allar, you have Nicholas Singleton, you have Katron Allen, and now you're getting back Trey Wallace. You have Theo Johnson, you have Tyler Warren in this bowl game, and for the entirety of the season, even again, I know Ohio State and Michigan have top 5 defenses of their own. Penn State struggled on 3rd down against West Virginia from time to time. Penn State struggled on 3rd down against Illinois, Northwestern. It was not easy sledding. And Ole Miss, coming from the SEC, yeah, their defense, I would say, is a little more middle of the pack. But when you compare them to some of the teams that they went up against, those numbers don't reflect how good Ole Miss's defense actually is. So, yeah, 3rd down is going to be a problem, but Trey Wallace coming back certainly helps them, and having Theo Johnson not opt out of this game does as well.
You know, who do you have for Penn State as your kind of pick to click? Who's the player that you're looking for Saturday?
Trey Wallace coming back is a big deal. Drew Allar, I think, is the obvious one. So if you can get your first year starter to finally take that next step forward, or at least show signs that he is, because he's getting trashed when people say, "Oh, he's in the Heisman conversation." They're like, Drew Allar is one of the and the casual fan who doesn't know anything about college football says Drew Allar is the worst quarterback to even be mentioned in these rankings, and that nobody else, the analysts, don't know what they're talking about. Drew Allar is extremely talented. He's a five-star quarterback. You drop him in to a lot of different systems, and he'd be able to succeed as well. 23 touchdowns to 1 interception for a true sophomore first-year starter is impressive. But you want Penn State, the offense, to show that it had the capabilities to at least be more than a game-managing type of unit. And that starts with the quarterback. Drew Allar has to shed this fear of whatever it is, turning the ball over, making a big mistake. I know he was coached to do that. Hey, rely on your defense, just protect the football, and we'll win games by grinding down the opponent. But you can't do that against an opponent like Ole Miss. So Drew Allar's got to be comfortable. He's got to be ready to go, and the offense has to get creative as well. J1 Sider and Ty Hallis, co-offensive coordinators, once again, have to build in some creativity, because your typical offensive plays aren't going to get it done even against Ole Miss. Ole Miss is not a bad defense. They're a good defense. I think they're underrated based on what you see from the stats. But it starts with Drew Allar and it continues with the play calling. Those are the things that need to click in this case, and getting a good wide receiver back will certainly help that cause.
So, talking about Allar, and you're talking about his confidence that he has had. One of the shows that we've done in the past, that confidence was a question that you had for him. Do you just think that is something in his makeup, or is it anything that is confidence related in his game? Because if you look at his numbers, he has not had a poor season. Where's this coming from?
I think part of it is just natural. Drew Allar has always been described as someone who's a little more on the quiet side, and he's had to break out of his shell. Sean Clifford was a fiery guy. He was emotional. Drew Allar was described more as silent. I don't want to say timid, because if you're playing college football, you're playing Division I football, you are not scared. You are not afraid. But is there this risk aversion in Drew Allar's game? Absolutely. And it's just interesting because it can't all be him. He's 19. So he's only 19 going on 20 years old. He can only make so many decisions on his own. It's not like if Patrick Mahomes is risk averse and everything. Yeah, that makes sense because he's been a pro quarterback in the league for 5+ years. But Drew Allar, who's still 2 years removed from high school, is still following the lead of the coaches. I put that on Mike Yurcich. He's the offensive coordinator. You could put that on James Franklin as well, but James Franklin has shown us that he's more of the CEO. He lets his assistant coaches do as they will. Drew Allar took a few more risks, and you can do this against Michigan State. You can do this against the Spartans, but at least it was a step in the right direction that Drew was willing to take more risks. I don't know what the communication was. I don't know how they operated, but the coaches, and James Franklin can be implicated in this as well. His hands aren't completely clean here. Mike Yurcich takes a lot of the responsibility. James Franklin's going to take some, because if you're the coach, you're the head coach, or the CEO, yeah, you got to fix it. That's your job, to correct those mistakes.
Still more to come on Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We've done 3 shows in Thunderdome, and now it's time for our predictions from the game and what you can expect to see this Saturday. That's coming up next. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers say hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That is $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. The wide range of betting options include spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. The Peach Bowl itself, the line has gone up. Penn State is now a 4.5-point favorite Saturday in the Peach Bowl. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with FanDuel. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen of the day, and shout out to the everydayers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to be part of the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. Be part of history. All right, Zach, we're in Thunderdome. This is our third show that we've done leading up to this Peach Bowl. This is going to be the outcome segment. This is going to be the what do we expect to happen? And we're going to start with you. Penn State, what do you expect to happen Saturday, and what is your final score prediction?
Pretty much status quo, aside from the fact that you might see some different wrinkles. Having Andy Kotelnicki, the new offensive coordinator, even though he's not calling plays, even though he's not designing the game plan, I think he's going to have some influence as far as what Penn State's going to do, not from a play standpoint, but maybe an execution. So the plays that Penn State has are going to change. I'll cut to the chase. I've been back and forth. I thought that Ole Miss should have been favored in this case, but I was also anticipating that Penn State would have some more opt-outs. And all those players, aside from Chop Robinson, are going to be playing. So Ole Miss, this is an incredible matchup. I'm banking on the fact that Penn State has the players back that were quietly missing from practice or left games, or Abdul Carter and Trey Wallace. Both those guys being back and they're 100% and they're set to play. I'm going to go Penn State 27, Ole Miss 24. Penn State, Ole Miss's defense is better than most people would probably give them credit for, but Penn State's defense is still, I get it, Manny Diaz isn't on the sideline, but his co-defensive coordinator is Anthony Poindexter. The rest of the defensive staff is there. All the players except Chop Robinson and Penn State. Chop Robinson left that game early against Ohio State, and Ohio State still only scored 20 points. So the rest of that defense without Chop Robinson has already been in these types of situations. I think the total goes over. It's, it's neutral temperatures, right? Because you're indoors, you're on turf. But I think these teams that have solid sophomore classes that are all returning, this is the 2024 preseason game. This isn't the end of the 2023 season, even though it technically is. This is the preseason look for next season. Drew Allar, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, Denai Dennis Sutton, Abdul Carter, all these guys are coming back and are now truly the stars of the team. They're not, second on the list in terms of veteran experience, in terms of leadership. This is their team now. And because of their potential, I'm going to bank on that and say it is enough to beat an Ole Miss team that does have as much strength and returning players coming back, but not all of those assets are there yet. The guys in the transfer portal that they've gotten, talk to me in a year from now. Maybe this is a little bit of a different matchup, but right now at this time on December 30th, Penn State can get it done with a field goal, but they're going to still play their relaxed, controlled pace where they keep the football away, and they need to keep Ole Miss's offense on the sideline so that they don't try to get into a shootout. And that's the formula to win. And I think Penn State will be able to stick to it.
I think that Ole Miss is going to be able to get first downs. I think Quinshon Judkins is not going to be explosive, but he's going to be effective enough to where the chains keep moving. And with Ole Miss, whenever Ole Miss can get that first down and get the tempo cranked up, teams have trouble adjusting to it. The play calls have to be quicker. The young players that are in the game have to make quicker decisions on the fly. The tempo can really affect what is going on, but Ole Miss has to get that first down to be able to get it started. I think Ole Miss is going to be able to do that. I mentioned earlier that Tre Harris is somebody that should be watched if you're looking at how this game is going for Ole Miss or Penn State. I think Tre Harris is about to have a day, and this isn't going to be an indictment, in my opinion, on the Penn State defense. I just think it's going to be a typical bowl wild football game, and there might be turnovers. There could be a little bit of chaos. It could be a little bit of fun, but I am looking at Ole Miss 34, Penn State 31. And everybody's going to listen to this that is, we are wearing Navy. Penn State fans is like, there's no way that Ole Miss is scoring 30 points on us. And I know that. I've seen that all in my timeline. I would say that in a bowl game, and especially in this bowl game where you have so many people concentrating on the draft, both Ole Miss and Penn State, I think there's a chance for bust. I think tempo is going to be a little bit different because as good as Penn State is, they don't really do tempo in the Big Ten, and Ole Miss does it about as fast as anybody else. I think Ole Miss and Penn State against that defense and tempo, and Tennessee against Iowa. that is going to be so intriguing throughout bowl season. I think that is going to cause it to get out of hand a little bit. I think Penn State's offense is going to cook. Singleton and those guys are going to run the ball. I think Allar is going to have a good day. It's going to be a springboard type day for him into next season. But what's going to do it, in my opinion, all these defensive players that are coming back to Ole Miss next year, they looked in the transfer portal and they saw that Walter Nolan's coming in, Princely Amon Mielen, Tyler Barron, all of these players coming in to take their jobs. I think there's going to be a little bit more motivation, and they're going to dig in the fourth quarter and win the football game.
Yeah, Penn State certainly doesn't have that problem. They're kind of locked in on one player, Julian Fleming from Ohio State, who's from the state of Pennsylvania, ended up going to the Buckeyes. So there's definitely not that. I guess, if you will, the motivation is going to be all organic for Penn State. I'm not saying that Ole Miss is manufacturing theirs, but when it comes to bowl games, motivation is certainly one of the biggest keys. And I think Penn State's motivation is simply that they missed out on the college football playoff, and that goes hand in hand with Ole Miss. But James Franklin is very good at getting these players up for big games. For the quiet games, maybe not as much, but these type of games, I mean, they're getting ready to try to complete a sweep of the New Year's Six bowls under James Franklin. There is a lot on the line. There's bragging rights here, and I'm excited for a good matchup. But to your point, to say that those guys individually, I think collectively Penn State has team motivation, but individual motivation maybe not so much. For the Ole Miss team, absolutely. Oh my goodness, they all individually have something to prove. Penn State as a team has something to prove.
Yeah, it should be really interesting. I do appreciate it, Zach, very much. You stopping by. And I do want to thank everybody for making the Locked On Nittany Lions and Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. Every dayers, you've heard us. We've been at Thunderdome, 3 separate shows, and I'm sure on his show he's going to have all the recruiting talk in the world, and he's going to be talking Peach Bowl as well. But so for your second listen, check out Locked On and their 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. For those of you on YouTube, we will send you there right now. If you're going to the game, please be safe, whether you're an Ole Miss or a Penn State fan. I hope everybody enjoys it and it's a good time. And Zach, man, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm excited for this one on December 30th. And it'll be a good game regardless, whether there's some points or a lot of points. It's going to be a close one.
Yeah. Take care, buddy. And I'll talk to you later.